All right, everybody, and welcome back to another grilling version of my home cooking channel. I'm going to be smoking some ribs today. I have 3 slabs of ribs that I'm going to smoke with charcoal and wood to produce ribs just like these. This is the grill I used in Atlanta, but since I've moved to Hawaii, I've had to improvise and adapt my smoking techniques to use the grill that I have now. So my goal is to hopefully give you some techniques that allow you to get great smoking results for meat and vegetables, regardless of the size of the grill you have. But before we get started, I always like to take an opportunity to ask that you please subscribe to the channel. I like making new friends and having new people follow me. Also, if you'd like to be notified when new videos are uploaded, just click the little bell. If you like the videos, please give them a thumbs up and definitely comment if you have suggestions and ideas that I can use on my channel. And if you find the videos useful, please share them with your family and friends. Again, I always like making new friends, and I hope to make some new friends by you sharing the videos. All right, let's get started. You're gonna need your meat or vegetables. I'll be using 3 slabs of ribs. You're gonna need your dry rub or just salt and pepper. And you're gonna need some butter, spreadable butter, squeezable butter, or pump style. And you're gonna need some butcher paper or aluminum foil. You're also going to need charcoal briquettes or coals, your wood chunks, and your lighter fluid. Okay, we're going to start by peeling the thin membrane that's just under the slab of ribs. To do that, you want to start a little piece on a corner, at least that's how I usually do it, and you want to start peeling that membrane all the way back, getting your fingers up under there so that you can get a good grasp. It may not be easy the first time, particularly if your hands are slippery from handling the ribs, but once you get it started, it should be able to peel right off of the bones. So just peel that membrane off. Again, it may not be easy the first time, but you want to get that membrane off so that the smoke can start to permeate the meat of the ribs. Now we want to start seasoning our ribs. I have a dry rub that I use, and I usually just sprinkle it all over the meat, making sure that I get as much coverage on the meat as I can. Once I get the meat seasoned, I try to make sure I get the edges as well. Depending on how your dry rub is mixed, you don't have to worry about over seasoning your meat. Once I get the dry rub on the meat, I usually go ahead and take my hand and just pat the dry rub onto the meat. After making sure that the dry rub has adhered to that side, I just flip the slab over and begin dusting the other side of the ribs as well. Again, once you've added your dry rub, you want to make sure you pat it well into the meat to make sure it adheres consistently throughout the slab. For the ribs I'll be cooking, I want to make sure I do this for each slab. When choosing your charcoal, you want to make sure you get a really good quality brand, otherwise your coals will burn out far quicker than your meat cooks. And also, I'm using mesquite wood chunks. You could use hickory or apple or cherry. Hickory is pretty strong, but mesquite is a little milder. The apple and cherry woods are also a milder flavor as well. When preparing my coals, I always build a mound first. Then I'll douse the coals with the lighter fluid. I do the same for my firebox. I'll take the wood, build it around the mound of coals, and then I'll douse the coals and the wood with lighter fluid as well. Now we're ready to light our grill. Always be careful when you're lighting your grill, just in case there are any accidental flare-ups. So just take a few clicks of your lighter, get those coals and wood started in your firebox, then move on over to the main cooking area of your grill and get the coals started over there. If you'll notice, I only have coals on the far end of the grill close to the firebox. This is because I want to use an indirect heat to cook my meat. I'll start the coals on this end, but I'll place my meat on the opposite end of the grill. You'll want to let your coals burn until the flame has died down and the coals have partially ashed over, and you can see the red glow of the heat from the coals. At this point, you want to start leveling your coals so that you can have a consistent cooking area from which you want your heat to generate. You'll want to do the same thing for the coals and the wood in your firebox. If you have a grill that doesn't have a firebox, another technique would be to use wood chips instead of wood chunks. You want to make several of these so you'll have enough for your cooking process, but just soak those chips in water overnight, remove them the next morning, and create an envelope out of heavy-duty aluminum foil. Place the chips in the foil and then crimp the top and poke holes on both sides. That way, when you lay the envelope of aluminum on top of your coals, it'll have an opportunity to effectively smoke your meat during the cooking process. Now you can see our coals have ashed over really well and producing some serious heat. We're sitting at about 320 degrees right now. We want to try to get our temperature down to between 225 and 275, and we want to smoke our ribs for about 3 hours at that temperature. The way we achieve that temperature is by adjusting the vent on the smokestack as well as adjusting the dampener on the firebox. After achieving the right venting and dampening combination, we should achieve our target temperature of about 225 to 275. Now that we have our coals just right and we've regulated our heat to our desired temperature, we want to replace the grate back onto the grill. Now we want to start adding our meat. We're going to add our meat on the opposite end of the heat where the coals are, with the thickest part of the ribs facing our heat source. You want to check your grill about every 30 to 45 minutes. During those checks, you want to make sure your temperature is maintained. You also want to check the meat to make sure it's not burning in the wrong places. You also want to check your coals. If your coals are burning down, you may need to replace some. And the last thing is to check your wood chunks. Or if you're using wood chips, check those as well. If the chunks are burning down, you may want to add some more wood chunks to keep that smoke coming through consistently. After about an hour and a half, we can see that our meat is doing wonderfully well. The color is beautiful, smoke is consistent, and you can start to see the meat pulling away from the bones. Our slabs of ribs are looking really good. Let's get a closer look. Again, you can start to see how the meat is beginning to pull away from the edges of the bones. At this point during my check, I can see that the coals are starting to burn down. So I'm definitely going to want to add a few more coals because I still have about another hour in the cooking process. Now that we've smoked our ribs for a good 3.5 hours, we're ready to start taking the ribs off the grill. As you can see, our ribs are turning out very well. Nice color. If you'll also notice, I've added a few coals to the end of the grill. Those coals are going to be significant when we start the final cooking process. Now that we've taken our meat off the grill, we want to go straight to the wrapping process. But before we wrap, we want to take the butter that we have and slather it all over the rib. We don't have to get butter in every single part of the rib, but we want to make sure we have butter from one end to the other. And as the butter melts on the grill, it'll fill in the gaps on its own. Once we get one side buttered up, we want to flip it over and begin slathering the other side. You want to do this while the ribs are still hot. Now we want to wrap the ribs. Just fold them over into the butcher paper, or you can use aluminum foil. Get a good tight wrap. Fold the ends over, keeping everything in place. And you want to place them on the grill bone side down. So remember how you wrap them. And you're going to do the other slabs of ribs the same way. Now we want to bump our heating temperature up to about 350 to 380 degrees. And we're going to smoke the ribs for about another hour or so. So now we want to place our wrapped ribs back on the grill until all three are placed on the grill grates. So after the ribs have smoked for another hour, hour and a half, we're ready to take them off the grill to prepare now that the smoking process is complete. Now that we have our ribs off the grill, we want to leave them wrapped for about 5 or 10 minutes just to let them rest a little. Letting them rest allows those juices to redistribute throughout the meat. As far as unwrapping, there's really nothing to it, but I suggest you be very careful because a lot of the juices and the melted butter will have collected in your wrapping. So you don't want those to spill out or to spill on you. Here you can see where the meat has started to recede from the edges of the bone. We have a really nice smoked color. You can see some of the butter still pooling on the meat. We're looking really good. Now we're ready to start slicing our ribs. I like slicing my ribs bone side up. That way I can see where the bones are and where to slice precisely between the bones. So let's get started. Be careful when you're using your knife. If your ribs are cooked right and they're tender, you should be able to slice right through them with no problem. So just take your time, find the center between the bones, and slice away. Okay, now that our ribs have been sliced and we have a view from the outside, let's take a look at the ribs from the inside. You can see the nice smoke ring on the edges. Sliced perfectly. You can see that the meat is very tender. It's not tightly packed. You can see that the meat has started to separate. Looks like our smoked ribs turned out really well. Now let's take one of our ribs and try our fork test. You can see just how tender the meat is, how it pulls apart effortlessly, all the way down to the bone. Well, we've reached the end of another grilling edition of Leisure Cooking at Home with Barry. I hope you're able to use some of the techniques I've displayed here the next time you're smoking some meat. And please remember to subscribe to the channel. And if you're interested in knowing when new videos are uploaded, just click the little bell. Also, if you liked the video and it was helpful to you, give it a thumbs up. And please leave your comments for me. I'm always interested in knowing how I can improve. And finally, please remember to share the videos with your family and friends. That's it for now. Happy smoking and happy grilling. See you next time.